everyone, to another thrilling episode of Career Navigators. I'm your host, Sami, and today we're diving deep into a topic that can make or break your career: the 10 signs a manager is bad to work for. Joining me is the ever insightful Rana. Let's get started, shall we?
Hi, I'm thrilled to be here. So, what's the first sign we're going to talk about today?
Great question. The first sign is a lack of clear communication. A good manager should be able to convey their expectations, goals, and feedback clearly and consistently. When a manager fails to do this, it can lead to confusion, missed deadlines, and a generally chaotic work environment. For example, imagine a project where the manager gives vague instructions and everyone is left guessing what needs to be done. That can be incredibly frustrating and demotivating.
That makes a lot of sense. I've actually experienced that before. It's like being on a ship without a compass. How can employees navigate their tasks when they don't know where they're going? What are some ways to address this issue if you're an employee?
Absolutely, and it's a common problem. One effective way to address this is by requesting regular check ins or one on one meetings with your manager. During these meetings, you can ask for specific, detailed instructions and clarify any ambiguities. It's also helpful to document these discussions so you have a clear record of what was discussed. This can prevent misunderstandings down the line.
That's a great tip. Moving on to the next sign. What about micromanagement? I've heard so many horror stories about managers who can't let go of control.
Micromanagement is a huge red flag. A micromanager is someone who constantly monitors and controls every detail of their employees' work, often leading to a lack of trust and autonomy. This can stifle creativity and innovation, and it can also be incredibly demotivating. For instance, a manager who insists on approving every single email or task can create a toxic environment where employees feel like they're not trusted to do their jobs properly.
That sounds awful. I remember a time when my manager would even dictate the font size and color in our reports. It was so frustrating. How can employees deal with a micromanager without causing conflict?
It's definitely a tricky situation. One approach is to have an open and honest conversation with your manager. Explain how their micromanagement is affecting your work and your morale. You can also offer to take on more responsibility and show that you're capable of handling tasks independently. Sometimes managers micromanage because they don't have confidence in their team, so building that trust can be a game changer.
That's a good point. Speaking of trust, lack of support is another sign. What does that look like in a work environment?
A lack of support can manifest in various ways. It could be a manager who doesn't provide the necessary resources, tools, or training for their team to succeed. Or it could be a manager who doesn't advocate for their team's needs or interests. For example, if you need a specific software to complete a project, but your manager keeps delaying the purchase, it can seriously hamper your ability to do your job effectively.
That's so frustrating. I once had a manager who wouldn't approve any training sessions, even though they were crucial for our projects. How can employees navigate this lack of support?
One strategy is to document the impact of this lack of support on your work. Keep a record of how specific resources or training could have improved your performance or the outcome of a project. You can then use this data to make a compelling case to your manager or even higher ups. Additionally, seeking out informal support networks or self-educating can be helpful in the meantime.
That's a good idea. Moving on, what about favoritism? I've seen this a lot and it can really divide a team.
Favoritism can be a major issue. It occurs when a manager consistently shows preference for certain employees over others, often based on personal relationships rather than merit. This can create a toxic work environment where employees feel undervalued and demotivated. For example, if a manager always assigns the best projects to their favorite team member, it can lead to resentment and a lack of teamwork.
I've seen that play out in real life. It's so disheartening when you feel like your hard work is being overlooked. How can employees address favoritism without making things worse?
It's a delicate situation. One approach is to focus on your own performance and continue to excel. You can also seek feedback from your manager to understand what you need to do to be considered for better opportunities. If the favoritism is severe, it might be necessary to bring it up with HR or a higher level manager. Just make sure you have specific examples and a professional demeanor when you do.
That's sage advice. Unrealistic expectations are another sign. Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly, unrealistic expectations can take many forms, from setting impossible deadlines to expecting perfect results every time. This can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and a high turnover rate. For example, a manager who assigns a 2 week project and expects it to be completed in 2 days without considering the workload is setting their team up for failure.
That's so true. I once had a manager who expected us to work overtime every single week. It was exhausting. How can employees manage these unrealistic expectations?
One effective strategy is to set realistic timelines and communicate them clearly to your manager. Be honest about your workload and the resources you need to complete a task effectively. If a deadline is truly unrealistic, explain why and propose a more reasonable timeline. It's also helpful to prioritize tasks and focus on delivering quality work within the given constraints.
That's a practical approach. Lack of feedback is another sign. How does that affect employees?
A lack of feedback can be incredibly damaging. Without regular feedback, employees are left in the dark about their performance and areas for improvement. This can lead to uncertainty, low morale, and a lack of motivation. For example, if a manager never provides constructive criticism or recognizes good work, employees might feel undervalued and unappreciated.
I've definitely felt that way before. It's like you're working in a vacuum. How can employees get the feedback they need?
One way is to request regular performance reviews or check ins with your manager. During these meetings, ask for specific feedback on your work and areas where you can improve. You can also seek feedback from peers or mentors within the organization. Building a support network can provide valuable insights and help you grow professionally.
That's a great suggestion. Poor conflict resolution is another sign. Can you explain how that affects a team?
Absolutely. Poor conflict resolution can lead to unresolved issues, resentment, and a toxic work environment. A good manager should be able to mediate conflicts fairly and effectively. For example, if two team members are having a disagreement, a manager who avoids addressing the issue or takes sides can exacerbate the problem and create a divide within the team.
I've seen that play out, and it's not pretty. How can employees handle conflicts when their manager isn't helping?
In such cases, it's important to take the initiative. Try to resolve conflicts directly with the other party using active listening and empathy. If that doesn't work, you can seek help from a neutral third party, such as an HR representative. It's also a good idea to document the conflict and the steps you've taken to resolve it, in case the issue escalates.
That's a solid strategy. Neglecting employee growth is another sign. How does that manifest in a work environment?
A manager who neglects employee growth is failing to provide opportunities for development and advancement. This can lead to stagnation and a lack of motivation. For example, if a manager never offers training, mentorship, or challenging projects, employees might feel stuck and unfulfilled in their roles.
That's a real career killer. How can employees advocate for their own growth?
One effective way is to set career goals and discuss them with your manager. Ask for opportunities that align with your goals, such as new projects, training, or mentorship programs. If your manager is not supportive, you can seek out these opportunities independently or look for a manager who is more invested in your growth.
That's a proactive approach. Finally, a lack of empathy is a huge red flag. How does that affect the team?
A lack of empathy can create a cold and uncaring work environment. A manager who doesn't understand or care about their employees' personal and professional needs can lead to high stress and low morale. For example, if an employee is going through a difficult time and needs some flexibility, a manager who dismisses their needs can make the situation much worse.
That's so true. I once had a manager who completely ignored my request for a day off due to a family emergency. It was really disheartening. How can employees deal with a manager who lacks empathy?
It's important to communicate your needs clearly and professionally. If your manager is consistently unresponsive, it might be necessary to involve HR or a higher level manager. Additionally, building a support network of colleagues who understand your situation can provide emotional and practical support. Sometimes finding a new manager or a new job might be the best solution if the lack of empathy is severe.
That's a great wrap up. Thanks, Sami, for sharing all these insights and practical tips. It's been an eye opening conversation.
Thank you, Rana. I'm glad you found it helpful. If you have any questions or want to share your own experiences, drop us a line in the comments. Until next time, keep navigating your careers with confidence and resilience. Goodbye, everyone.